Prabhin Sukumaran. He is an assistant professor at the Dr. K.C. Patel Research and Development Center, Charotar, Gujarat, renowned for interdisciplinary expertise in geology, archaeology, and paleoclimatic studies. Dr. Sukumaran serves as the secretary of INQUA's Human Biosphere Commission and is an active member of Association of Quaternary Research. I invite him for the talk on socio-cultural, economic, and geological aspects along the Narmada River in its lower reaches, Gujarat.
Very good evening to all, and thank you for the introduction, and thank you for organizers for inviting me to present my work here. Frankly, giving the last lecture in a talk gives me a lot of benefits, like the platform what I am planning to talk, it's already been set by Dr. Parth and Vota sir. So half of my slide, I don't have to discuss much. I can just briefly mention that. And while preparing this also, because when I saw the schedule and I realized that it is my last talk, so at that time itself, I cut short 5-6 slides from my PPT. So technically I have 20 slides. So I'll try to finish as soon as possible with a short and sweet what we have done in lower reaches of Narmada. So morning onwards, we are talking about Narmada. Narmada is a very long river. And as a geological point of view, where we are working, it is in the lower reaches of Narmada, that is after the Kevadia Dam towards downstream till the coastal region. So the Narmada in this region are very active. And this single picture, which will show us that how this river is connected to the people. We can see the people using the water for their daily activities. We can see the shipping, the boats, the fishing boats, that is actually connected to the economical aspect. We can see the animals. We can see the animals moving around and using this platform. And we can see a beautiful geological section that it is around 30 meters of thick sediment sequence in the same photograph. And we can also see a group of young geologists. They are moving around and trying to understand these things. So I was also moving around this region some 10-15 years back. And I worked extensively in this region for quite 6 years duration. And we have done some work, and that is what I'm going to present today. And what is seen in this photograph, it is the present day. The river is attached to the human life. The entire ecosystem is attached to the human life. But is it a recent phenomena? No, that is what Otto sir told us in the morning, that it is not recent phenomena. The evolution of human or using this landscape, the ecology, it has evolved over a period of time, maybe around 50,000-60,000 years, since the human started using this landscape. And we know from the studies from other continents that the human evolution took around 7 million years. And the only human surviving today, that is the Homo sapiens, that belongs to all of us, all the people in the globe belongs to one single species, that is the Homo sapiens. But it is not like that only Homo sapiens use this terrain or use this river or use this water or use this landscape. There must be many other species who use this landscape, use this water, you were using this landscape, and they were surviving in this region. And what information do we have about this? So what we are trying to understand is the evolution of human and the geological aspects and the fluvial sedimentological aspects, the fluvial changes, we cannot separate it from the human evolution. It's not only human, the animals, the vegetation, the biota, everything. We cannot separate it. So everything plays together in a place, and we have to decode that understanding if we want to survive it in the future. So I'm going to discuss something that how we are trying to do this. So if we talk about the human coming to the Indian subcontinent or moving out of Africa, there are many beautiful stories and there are many studies across the globe. So there are multiple migrations. So the older migrations, Parth already discussed it in the morning, that you people were coming out of Africa with older stone tools and they were migrating and occupying other landscape. So at least a 2 million year old story we have the people outside Africa with different tool sets. And then we have the younger migrations, the newer migrations, or the Pleistocene migrations, where the Homo sapiens came out of Africa and they occupied these different landscapes during the last 70 or 100,000 or 200,000 years. So if you look at the Indian subcontinent, so we have at least 32,000 years evidence from Sri Lanka, that is from a fossil evidence, so that we have to believe. And the entry point, if you see at this point where it is 120 to 90,000 years. So from 120 to 90,000 years, people existed this small path and they tried to migrate and they could reach up to Sri Lanka. So somewhere they might have passed through Indian subcontinent. So there would be an older population. They used this landscape and they left some culture, some imprints that for the modern human to adopt. Okay, so this is what the existing studies in a global scenario. Now, what about the Indian context, if you look at it? So the Indian scenario is a published literature says something like this. There are migration paths across Narmada and there is a migration. This is all possible modeled migration with very limited archaeological evidences. So people use the vegetation or the landscape or the soil type, and they identify that what kind of regions are most probable these people could have migrated. And along with that, there are some points where they have evidences of older stone tools. And we don't have any fossil yet to confirm this roots. And so this is what the existing. So the Narmada become one of the major in that aspect, one of the major path for the human migration. So across the globe, if we see the literature, if we see or try to understand the migration paths, so we will see this kind of figures where the human migrating across Indian subcontinent. Now, if we see the reality or if you try to understand what it is in the Indian context, this is the same map Partha has already shown. So we have around 2,000 prehistoric archaeological site records from India. It's a huge. That means the people were occupying this landscape for quite a long period of time, and they were using this land for different purposes. Now, when they are using this land, they are using this natural resources. This is directly connected to the geological aspect, because these people only can survive with a proper stone tool, proper facilities, and those people may not have the facilities like us we are having today to modify their environment. They were more adapting to the environment. So the natural, geological and climatic conditions might have played a huge role in their existence on this surface. And Partha has already mentioned it in the morning. It is in the center of the old world. So it is having a large potential. So this is what already Partha has done. What we did is one step ahead. We did some cluster analysis, like what you have taken. We took all these individual points where we have a stone tool record or a prehistoric archaeological site record. And we tried to connect the 20-kilometer radius from that particular site and tried to cluster it. So doing this, we took this 20 kilometer. It was a very random number. Some of the textbooks or the publications says the people in the prehistoric time were moving around 20 kilometer for their day-to-day activity. So that is a very fancy number for us at this moment. And it is not the final output. We just wanted to see whether there is any clustering which happens in this case or not. So when we look at the clusters, it forms very beautiful patterns. Okay. So I can easily make up some lines for the migration, like multiple options. If I consider all the stone tools, lower, middle and upper, there is one pattern, middle, lower, middle only, upper only, there are multiple options, but everything goes into different directions and different branches that it is there. But we are not yet finalizing this report or this map at this point. This is only our fundamental or basic understanding, because these points or the data what we are using at this moment for the cluster analysis is being collected by last 100 years of archaeological explorations. And there are many challenges we faced while compiling and plotting this data. Many of the cases, most of the articles, all the reports do not say exactly the location. The latitude, longitude of the sites are not given. The name of the sites are sometimes misspelled, or sometimes they only simply write that it is 50 kilometers away from this village in this direction or something and close to this some landmark. So in those all difficulties what we have faced during compiling this data, we are not very sure about the actual correctness of these points at this point. So we need to take one by one, district by district, collect this data and reassign and reassess and replot all this thing and redo the entire process again. But this was just a beginning for us. But one thing was very sure, that in any culture if you take, there is some role in this western part, in the entry point. Somewhere it is very close to the Narmada and that central portion. It is having some connection. So something is there which is interesting to us when we try to understand the past human who were occupying or who were migrating through this path. Now, as I rightly said, or as I said, that it is not only the human, because human will only use the landscape or migrate or do anything if they have a proper geological conditions available. If it is a river or a large river, they are not able to cross, like Sir was talking in the morning, that when there is Narmada, there are points where people can cross and we are bound to get archaeological sites on both the sides. So that kind of conditions, that natural barriers, that we need to understand. So I started looking in that, what is the understanding of prehistoric human and the quaternary studies from the Gujarat alluvial plain or the lower reaches of Narmada, which is a part of Gujarat alluvial plain, which is larger stretch, including Tapi, Narmada, Sabarmati, and all the rivers. And one part is the Narmada. So this is the first report. And it is published in 1898. It was like an eye-opening to me, because if I started reading this report, this is Robert Brucefoot, the first one who picked the first Paleolithic tool from Indian subcontinent. He was a geologist, but he had a very good interest or very good eye on the Paleolithic tools. And he did the first geological mapping of Baroda state in that time. It was including the Bombay, Gujarat, and all this stretch. It was called the Baroda state. And his statement in his report, the entire report, when he is talking about the sediments in Gujarat, he is telling that the entire stretch of northern portion of Gujarat is covered with loess sediment. And when I say the loess is a wind-blown fine-grained sediments. It has nothing to do with the alluvial plain or alluvial sediments or the fluvial sediments. And he is talking it in terms of loess cover across the Gujarat alluvial plain in the northern portion after Narmada. So here is the Narmada. This is Narmada. So all this yellow color, what he is showing, that he is saying that it is somewhere it is alluvium and somewhere it is the loessic sediment. And that interpretation was based on the structure of the sediment, which is bulk without having any structures of any fluvial signatures. And they were also getting this kind of sediments in the top of the mounts, the rocky mountains. So the river cannot reach up to that point. And he even plotted all that points where in the highlands where he is getting the sediments. The river cannot go and deposit it on that edge. So it is something which is carrying by the wind and depositing it. And this is yellowish in color and it is carbonaceous. If you see, it is carbonaceous and compact. And if you take the sediment and if you just make it powder using your fingers, it will just become a silt. It will just fall down. It doesn't have any clay. This is the sediment that the first image what I have shown, that 20 meter or 30 meter section, what it is depositing there, it is that sediment that he proposed, or he assumed that it is a Loess sediment. And he is one of the finest geologists who did the pioneering study in India. And what happened after that? 50 years later, almost 50 years later, in 1946, the Sankalia sir, H.D. Sankalia, he did an extensive prehistoric survey in Gujarat. And he has gone to all the locations what the Robert Bruce Foote was talking about, and he did some preliminary analysis on the sediments, and he again says the same statement, that it looks like Loess, similar like Europe and China. Now the problem here is, if it is Loess, is it a wind-blown sediment, then the river is not there actually, or river is not that strong. But then I was so excited to see this observation. I started looking at the publications that, okay, who did continue this study? And it's very strange. No one continued this hypothesis. No geologist, no prehistorian, nobody took this idea. And it is very well evident from the total number of papers, which is referring this report. That was one of the most important and interesting report. It took an year walking across the Gujarat alluvial plain and reported this, but nobody continued that research. Since 1946, there would be many publications, but most of the, I'm not putting all the things in chronological order. Rather, I am just skipping into the major findings only. So the next major breaking idea came in 2002. So it's again almost quite a long period of time, more than 50 years. In 2002, the study proposes the Gujarat alluvial plain, where Robert Bruce Foote was talking about the terraces or the sediments deposited by Loess. That's not Loess, it is actually, or they haven't said it is not Loess, but they have proposed it as a neotectonic activity. When you talk about neotectonic activity, that is the tectonic processes operating in the Quaternary period, last 2 million years, whatever the tectonic activities. So they have said the sediments which are 30 meter uplifted, 30 meter sediments are uplifted, and they have even prepared beautiful maps. So this color, this symbol what you see, that is what the same yellowish sediment across all this part. There is some part here on the left bank and across the right bank, that is the same sediment. And within the Narmada, in between the channel, there is some other small channel, there is another sediment. So earlier people, in between these people who mapped this area, they have called this older terrace, what I have shown in the first, I may have a better image. Yeah, the older terrace, they call it as paleo bank. It's nothing but it's a river bank which was, Narmada was flowing in once upon a time. That is the paleo bank, that is the vertical bank, and the surface, we call it as the paleo bank surface. So they have already said it is a paleo bank, and these people were calling it is a S1, S2 surface, but for the convenience of our communication at this moment, I will call the oldest bank which Narmada left, it is the paleo bank, and the surface is the paleo bank surface, and there is another bank, that is another terrace, that is neo bank. So there are two banks. So the study in 2002, they proposed the older bank, the paleo bank, is a Pleistocene uplift, whereas the neo bank is a Holocene uplift. So during the entire Quaternary, this whole region was uplifting, and as a result of this neotectonic activity, this 30 meter and 8 meter banks are now visible. For a geological point of view, uplifting it or doing anything with the sediment doesn't make much difference for us. This is for our scientific understanding. But in a geoarchaeological perspective, if we take these two models, One is the loess and another one is the tectonic or near tectonic activity. Both makes a lot of difference. Because if it is a loessic sediment, then the people who were moving around this area or utilizing this landscape were adapting to a arid climatic environment. Whereas if it is a fluvial alluvial plain, this much thick sediments which are deposited by the Narmada, then quite a long period of time Narmada was flowing like so large river and it was giving flooding every year. Then the people may not be able to use that entire landscape, the entire Gujarat alluvial plain, because it is huge deposit. And that kind of environment, the human cannot survive. It's a marshy environment where there is no stable land for them to sit and make their stone tool. They cannot hunt because water is coming every year, making everything washing away. So it makes a lot of difference for a geoarchaeological perspective because the entire story changes. But unfortunately, this is what the geologist understood, or I don't know, maybe the geological signatures misled them to read it that way, that okay, this is a neotectonic activity, and the major reason for believing this is the Narmada zone lineament. That is a deep-seated fault. Sir was talking it in the morning. When we construct the dam across it, it is across a Narmada zone lineament. That is the deep-seated fault which is dividing our Indian subcontinent into two parts. That much big, it is going across India. So that is a major fault. And when it is a major fault, and when river is flowing on that fault, it is quite natural to believe for a geologist that there is a neotectonic activity and it is uplifting. And for quaternary, it uplifted 30 meters, that many people agreed to that also. But I think after publishing this paper, they might have even thought of further, and or maybe they realized that it is not completely of neotectonic in nature. And in 2005, this is from the same group, so they published another paper which saying that there is a fluvial conditions. Mostly the region was under high rain, but while comparing this data, they were not able to justify the reason for this kind of huge sediment in this region because Gujarat is under the semi-arid condition. So the sediment, huge amount of sediment was not able to justify. So they just put it in this way. The deposition was mainly controlled by the humid condition prevailing in the large catchment further east of the study area. That means it is maybe from the upstreams of Narmada or maybe from the uplands where the central Narmada or in other parts. East of Narmada is not from the west or in this part. That's what their understanding at this point. You have to think one thing, understand one thing at this point. Both these studies have primarily used observations, the field observations. They were not having any analytical data. They have not analyzed any single sample from this region because it was the duration of the time where we were building our quaternary understanding. So the facilities was not there. So the observation, the field observation was the only information what we are having. So they have thought of this is the condition. So if I look at this paper, most of the sites or the location they have studied, that goes into the paleobank, not the neobank. So paleobank is the older terrace. The river was flowing once upon a time close to that, and then it left and come to a smaller channel, and that becomes the neobank. So they have identified most of the study from the paleobank. So paleobank have proposed as a mostly a monsoon dominated, river dominated fluvial system. Nobody has talked anything about the loess at this moment. And no single data was analyzed from both of these studies. But in the 2015, the same group, almost the same group, they have come up with some study from the neobank. So that becomes the younger bank now. So they have some studies from the neobank surface and they did few analysis on the sediments. And this is maybe the first study from that group. They have proposed a model with geological study along with the laboratory analysis. So the story got changed here. That means the 2002 study, which was talking, this is a neotectonic uplift in the Holocene. Holocene is 10,000 or 11,000 years. And that same section, 8-meter section, came down to be a 2000 years old sediment sequence of 8 meter or 4 meter in their study. So 4 meter studied section neobank, they assumed that it was a tectonically uplifting depositional process, now become a 1000 years old. So 1000 years, 8 meter uplift is practically impossible for anybody to believe. Because for the last 1000 years, Bharuch port is there. For the last 200, 250 years, the Golden Bridge is across the river. So if it is 8 meter uplifting, so by the time today, and this is already 20 years after the publication, so by the time today, the Bharuch Golden Bridge should be something like that. It is not that. So there we have all reason to believe that it is not that much neotectonically active. There are earthquakes coming in Bharuch. That's a different story. Earthquake is different and the neotectonism is different. So that's the study. So, and this is after this study in 2021, we have also published the same story. So this publication is in 2021, but this work was done during 2006 to 2011 during my PhD. Okay, so just to summarize, what is the current status? So the lowest story, which was proposed by 100 years back, nobody took. It is still laying down there without having any attention. And then people came up with neotectonic activity, and then the same group, they come up with the climate using the monsoon system, and then they come up with the 2015 study of a neobank, which states that it is climate, monsoon, and even the influence of marine. This is what the latest study on the neobank. So I did my work in this duration, in between this 2006 and 2015, from 2006 to 2011. That was the duration I studied from Narmada. After 2006, I did not do anything in Narmada. I left Narmada and shifted to another river basin. But I published it in 2021, that last paper, that thanks to COVID, that was long pending, but we could do it during the COVID. And what our study, which is a series of analysis from the subsurface mapping to the sedimentological analysis, multiple proxies, geochemistry, micropaleontology, and in 2012 itself, we have proposed that there is a storm record at 4 meter in this neobank. But these two studies, both of them are independent. I was never aware about the other group study, and I'm sure they were also not aware about our study. But our models have come up the same, and both the studies were very close, just 500 meters away from each other. So I studied this section and they studied the other section. So the point here is, both the studies are independent. We were not discussing with us, but both the studies come up with same model. That means reassurance. Okay. So though we were also from same institute, I have never discussed my studies. Though I submitted my thesis in 2011 and published the paper in 2021, but I'm sure they might have not seen the paper, or they have not referred the 2011 or 12 storm paper also, and they have not referred my PhD thesis also. So it is sure that they have not seen this publication or these studies, but this is independent, and both the studies are different proxies, not same proxies. Okay, what we have used in our study, we used the grain size analysis of around 400 samples. Around 400 samples, we studied sedimentological analysis, and that too with the basic fundamental primary sieve and pipette analysis. It was around 2 years of time. And they also used sedimentological analysis, but with a limited number of samples, with 11 number of samples. And we used foraminifera record. Foraminifera is the microfossils, which is there in the sea. So we studied or checked the presence of foraminifera in our samples, just to understand whether there is a marine influence or not. And we published that paper in 2011. And they have used another proxy, that is polynology. So they did around 11 samples. I'm not very sure about the number of samples because they have not mentioned the number of samples. I count that from the graph. It looks like 11 samples. And then we used the chronology of OSL dating. they have used the carbon dating. We used 3 samples for OSL and they have used 11 samples for chronology. And we have used major oxides. They have also used major oxides. They have 11 samples done and we have used around 7 samples. And I have used many other proxies like the magnetic susceptibility, the frequency dependent magnetic susceptibility and the subsurface sampling. And if you cumulatively see this model, which proposes that the region during 500 years back got into a rapid change in the depositional system influenced by marine processes, and that stabilized a landform. That is based on our study with around more than 1,000 data points. And they could do it, of course, they could do it with a less number of samples, less than 50 number of samples. They could do the same model, but they are all senior people. So I was just starting my career as a researcher. So they could do that same analysis. But if you look at the time point of view, as per their acknowledgement, they started the study in 2007 and completed it in 2015. So they took around 8 years. With all this data generating in laboratory, I took only 4 years to complete the model. So if you have data, it is easy to understand. If you don't have the data, it takes more time. So though it is a tedious job. So the story now about the neobank is that during the last 500 years time, this is 2 independent studied same model, last 500 years time, there was a period where the Narmada got so much of large sediment influx by the flooding. Okay, and that we could identify based on the sedimentological characteristics, this time duration, and we could also identify which is the primary deposits and which is the redeposits. And if you look at the other study where they have used a carbon dating, the numbers are so up and down. Usually this has to be from the youngest to oldest to younger, from the bottom to top, but they were getting it just up and down. This is primarily because of the fluvial system, because fluvial system is not like a lake system where the sediment comes and deposits. Here, the reworking is a continuous process. In a flood, it carries a large amount of sediment, and post-flooding season, it will be reworking, slowly moving here and there. So there is so much of up and downs. So we had to analyze a lot of sample to understand this reworking process. And finally, we come up with the magnetic parameters. So just a basic idea that because when the magnetic minerals, which is heavier than the other minerals, normal minerals, the heavy minerals, they transport slightly larger, smaller size compared to the non-magnetic minerals. And when they deposit, they erode last. So this concept we technically used in the magnetic parameters, and we standardized our data, and we identified which layer of sediment is primary and which layer of sediment is secondary and which is reworking, and accordingly we build up our model. So the study, what we understood, because it comes into the last 500 years, so we thought of that, okay, if 500 years we may have many historical documents also. So we started looking into the historical documents from this region. Bharuch is a very well-known port. And the historical document, what it is saying, which was a little bit scary, like that if you look at the statement, this is 1837, there is a typo. In the 1837, there was the major flood, and during that flooding, the river Narmada and Tapi was joining together. That's something that difficult to imagine at this point, but this is a written document, which is written in the Gazettes of India. You can read the statement here, which is very well written here. So these people were observing that in that period of time, this was the amount of water which was carrying by the river. And the story of Golden Bridge again confirms this. And the story of Bharuch port also confirms this. The story of Fort Wall also confirms this. Because there are reports of rebuilding the fault wall. So rebuilding of the fault wall will only happen if the fault wall collapses. So the collapsing time and the rebuilding time would be in between or close to it. So that was matching with our study. So the point here is it's around 400, 500 to 600 years back, there was a period of time the Narmada was gone into a very rapid storm, heavy flooding river, and it filled the sediments in that channel. So the bank or the neo bank or the sediment deposition, what we are looking at this today, is deposited around 500 years back during a short period of around 100 years time. So the large river which was carrying water through this paleo bank, is 3 kilometers wide, has now become a further smaller river 500 years back with a large amount of sediments depositing. And this huge amount of sediments are the products of Orsang. Orsang is coming from the granitic terrains. It is completely choked with sediments. So one single river or rain, major rain, can bring these all sediments into the Narmada, and then the sediment can reallocate. And during this period, there were some processes of storm, and the marine clay came into the picture that stabilized the sand, and that becomes our stable platform. So it created a new terrace, it created a new cultivation land, it improved the economy of the region, but it drastically reduces the capacity of the river at this point. And our Narmada Dam came in around 1960s, it started. So we constructed the Narmada Dam after this process of reducing the size of the river. So that is why I was asking in the morning whether we have considered this or not. If Narmada water increases, if any cause, maybe the change in the monsoon, if there is a large rain in the entire lower reaches of Gujarat or in the Orsang catchment, there would be a lot of sediment come into the picture. There would be a lot of water come into the picture, but the water has no place to flow to the Arabian Sea. So what will happen? Obviously, it will flood. Obviously, it will flood and it will deposit. So this kind of floodings are possible. That is what the historical document says, not me. I only generated a geological data which complementing this historical document, which is very well written in the historical document. So we are literally in a difficult position. I don't know when this condition will come back. If you ask me what next year, I don't know. Maybe after 10 years, maybe after 100 years, but it is obviously going to come back one day. That is for sure. We don't know exactly what would be the recurrence of these major floods. And if you see the conditions in Kerala last couple of years back, we have seen the flooding in such a way that the water level was going up to the second floor of the houses. The people have never seen in the last 200 years. That was so horrible in situation. And we may have much worse situation in this region because this is plain region and we have already done a lot of damage to the natural channel. It is shorter, water cannot flow. And we also have done the same thing Sabarmati also with Sabarmati Riverfront project. That is a total disaster. So we are dealing with the rivers in such a way, the river is weak now. So we do whatever you want. River will become stronger one day. So they will do whatever they want. And river is capable to remove all this thing. It won't mind. It's hardly a day. It's one day or two. Today it will cut all the things. And we have seen in the last week, the Campe Basin, 7 kilometers, the sea came into the land. Nobody knows why. The 7 kilometers, the sea water, it is there in the news, maybe in the Gujarati news, 7 kilometers, the sea water came to the Campe. Now, if the same thing happens in the Narmada, 7 kilometers, 8 kilometers is going into the river water will choke the sediments. Channel will not have the capacity and more water coming, it all will overflow. It is going to be a total disaster to the region, to the people, to the economy, to the agriculture field, everything. So in summary, this is what our observation or this is what we believe with independent two studies, not with my own study. Okay, so if it was only my study, I would have a question mark again, okay, whether I am correct in all that or not, all that observations or not. But it is verified by two different people, two different group of people. One is from the senior group of people and from my own observations that around this period, around 500 to 600 years before, there was a major shift in the depositional pattern of the river. And we assume because it was globally recognized transition phase of medieval warm to little ice age. There is a Holocene climate change event So it was matching with that. So we could we propose that it may be a signature of Holocene climate change or the little ice age to medieval warm period condition. That is what we propose. But at this point, if you want to cross-verify that, this is a last month study published from Western Ghats, which is far away from us. We are somewhere here. And this study is from a lake sediment from the Western Ghats. And they are also saying the same thing. They are saying that in the 1150 onwards, there is an increase in the rain. And we could see that in the 1400 onwards here. So in a carbon dating and the OSL dating, this time cannot be matched perfectly. But the trend is same. It is increasing. And that increase now is settling. What is happening, there will be a large change. Then it will go on for a quite period of time. Then it settle. Then the next level will come. So we may be now going to change into that kind of environment or that kind of condition in the near future. That's for sure. But how near, I don't know. So what next? If this is the condition, what next? So if the story what I believe from my scientific data is supported by another study, the first thing, if you ask me that what do you want to do now, I will say that I want to go to the entire villages in Narmada, lower reaches, and educate them and tell them that this is the condition. You people be prepared. At least have some food stored in every monsoon season. We don't know. We can't predict what will happen in the next year monsoon. We are not yet capable to do that. Only thing we can educate the people, educate the school kids. At least the school kids are more important because maybe if it is going to affect it in the same way, the kids are the one who are going to face it in the extreme situation in the next 20, 30 years. So this kids has to be educated. This is what our study says. So be please aware. And at the same time, I would also love to collect their indigenous knowledge, like you were talking in the morning, that we need to know the people, how these people, because people were there, from around 100,000 years back, people were using this landscape. So they have their own strategies to survive. So they are not respecting Narmada just because of it is a water. It is because of something. They were scared of something. They were having that faith in that, okay, if you do this, it will not create some harm to us. So we want to understand that stories, like the Narmada Parikrama, what the path, how they are following, what is the existing story, indigenous stories about them. We have to collect all that stories and try to connect it with the geological records and the historical documents. These two things are very important. And we realize that, and we come up with that initiation also. We started a small research foundation 2 years back. This is the second year. And under this research foundation, this is called Paleoclimate Ecology and Heritage Research Foundation. We could mobilize some people into it. So we already started now. Doing research and writing publications is one thing, but unless and until if it is not beneficial to the society, there is no point in doing that. That is what we strongly believe. And we could collect a lot of people, and we started number of initiatives like paleo schools, where we take students to the field and train them. And we have Paleo Tales, that is a magazine where we write the complicated scientific analysis reports into a easy to understand storytelling kind of magazines. And we have a Paleo Quest podcast, which is again making the stories and the scientific findings into a easy to understand podcast, where videos and some shooting. So these are all the last 2 years initiatives. We are still getting the momentum. And this platform I would like to use, and I would like to request that all of you please go to our website and please see that what we are doing. And if you find this is open to everybody, it is not my organization, it is an open community what we are generating. And I would request that all of you please go to the website. I'll show the website now, ID now. And please see that if you have any role in that, anything you can contribute, you can just fill up the form and be a part of the community, and we will be in touch with you people. And I'll especially thank to all these people. They are all part of my journey or our journey or group. I'm not taking individual names. That would be a long list. But many people are supporting us. All these people are supportive at any point, some point in through these 20 years of my career. So I'm thankful to all of them. And that's it. Thank you. And this is the website of PaleoHer. That is a non-profit. It's just 2 years old. We finished all the legal compliances. Now we are a legal entity to operate and work for the society. And we have a website. And we could, now as of today, we have around 150 people in the community, including from all undergraduates to postgraduate to scientists and people from across the globe, not only from India. All of them are a part of this and they are giving their support to this organization. So thank you very much. So if there is any questions, suggestions, please welcome.
Whenever a dam is constructed, 100 years data on rain, flood, tremor are collected. So was done about Narmada Dam. So there is no question of sudden sedimentation. Even if there is a regular sedimentation every year, there is a process of clearing sedimentation. Major dams in India have been constructed in 1970. And at no dam we had to stop them because of the sufficient sedimentation. Your research is well taken, no issue, and it calls for certain innovations and certain improvement at Narmada. I agree with it. But there is no fear that a day will come in near future that it will be said it will take for 100 years. Take it for 100 years, number one. Number two, you're talking about sedimentation in the mouth of Gulf of Cambay and water reaching Cambay. You yourself have said that once two plates were different. Cambay was a big port, Dholera was a big port, then there was third port, Koka was a port, they were very good port, and they were not filled up because of the sedimentation. They were filled up because of the two tectonic plates coming together. That is the reason that we are not going for building Kalpsar Dam, because Kalpsar Dam is being built between two tectonic plates. And if it is being built, then one day tectonic plate will move and Kalpsar Dam will collapse. So we are not building Kalpsar Dam. But to say that sudden sediment will take place at Narmada, I think you have to go further in proving how much sedimentation every year takes place and it really what happens, rather than merely seeing certain sedimentation data coming into river at the mouth of the river.
So just to give a response to that, we are talking about 500 years story, not 100 year.
No, 500 years, 100 years data are taken into consideration by
Yes.
planning it.
Yes.
And there is no sudden change in rain. What you say, sudden change in rain.
Yeah.
And there is sudden sedimentation.
Yeah,
Yes, there are tremors.
I agree that 100 years there is no change. Even this 100 years old map, what I have shown in the first, this Narmada is same. There is no change. The thing happened here. If you start from here to this blue part, this is deposited 500 years back.
You refer to Parajpe.
Hmm.
Parajpe was a place studied Narmada from your point of view.
Okay.
This book is available.
Okay.
Study and we will Parajpe and give him the keywords. And permits to read it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Any other?
We had a wonderful day. As time goes, I do organize few of the conferences and few of the series. And I was worried down the line who would give the last speech. When I was organizing this conference, Dr. Kalyan Chakraborty will recollect that I had to more or less pursue him and convince him that, because this is a new field for me, that and the last speaker is the magnet. last speaker has to hold the entire seminar. And now I'm convinced in the future when I do, Prabhin can do that role. He's young, but the way he holds the last lecture is indeed impressive. It's not time for giving me a Thanksgiving, but looking at the tomorrow's schedule, I thought of wrap up today's presentation. There is a saying that Surya ko diya kya dikhana hai. Lekin there is also a fact, I am Oriya, and we have a thing called Sambar Dasmi, in which we do so, the Surya ko hi diya dikhate hain. मेरा मम्मी सूर्य को ही बहुत बार दिया दिखाती है, और वो दिया दिखाती ना नहीं मुझे मालूम है, मुझे उस टाइम में खाना मिलता है, डिफरेंट वेराइटी ऑफ फूड मिलता है. So if I have to thank Dr. S.B. Ota, Dr. Vijay Sathe, and my colleague Parth Chauhan, it is like that, Surya ko diya dikhana hai. Having said that, I invite them, they are so profound, I do invite, or rather we do invite them repeatedly for all of our events, and we are really indeed lucky to have been living in a time period where three of you are doing the academics. And all of them brought contemporized the topic so well. And what interested me more was, I would say rather to the students, is bringing historiography to each and every lecture. I remind myself the contribution of Professor K. Padhaya, and along with that, S.C. Malik, Kishore Basa, and Nanjat Lahiri, the four people who are doing historiography so well in this century, and probably they have certainly influenced many of us to take the importance of what is importance of historiography, not only do science, along with the science you do talk of historiography, which probably ended up it so well, I would say. And there are two requests were made. One, to have a declaration for National Heritage Park in Hosangabad, and another one, Narmada as a living entity. If we have any other suggestion, probably this is the right forum to pass a resolution and send a letter to the government to take it off. And I'm sure a request from IIT Gandhinagar with having a signature of none other than Dr. Kalyan Kumar Chakrabarti should have a voice. This is a voice. This is a platform, and we can really put it up to the authority to take it up. And at this point of time, when the heritage is talking in India, if fossil will not talk, then who else will talk? That has to be fossil park is something, and that we should do. And then in the end, after looking at these lectures, no more worried that capacity building in last 50 years have been done well, I will believe. Looking at the young people lecture, seniors lecture, the seniors have done the capacity building. It's time that archaeology in India is certainly in safe hand, but it is time that all the archaeologists get engaged too. And then for today's evening, the delegates who are living in the guest house will take them to a small tour of our campus at 7 o'clock. And Asim and myself will come, and Asim can organize somebody else to take outside tour. And tomorrow, 6 o'clock, I'm not defining a talk because valedictory lecture, we do not have a time period for valedictory lecture. When it gets over, we'll take you to CIF, Central Instrumentation Facility in IIT Gandhinagar. Is one of the best laboratory, and that's one of the contribution this institution has done to this country. And we'll give a small round to tomorrow evening after the lecture to our Central Instrumentation Facility, and that will be led by our PhD student, Rias. Thank you. I'll come to the guest house at 7 o'clock.